Welcome to Season 7 of Be a Baller, the podcast where success isn't the goal, legacy is. This season is all about intentional living, leading with purpose, serving with faith, and leaving a mark that outlives us. We go beyond the highlights, bringing you real conversations with legacy builders from ministry, business, sports, education, and community. Leaders committed to the Wisdom Pledge, paying it forward to the next generation. If you're ready for faith-filled leadership and practical wisdom to live on purpose and finish strong, let's be a baller, legacy style.
Welcome to Be a Baller podcast, where we share powerful conversations on leadership, legacy, faith, business, and fatherhood. I'm your host, Coach Tim Brown, and today we're honored to welcome one of Central Ohio's most respected legal, civic, and community leaders, Attorney Larry James. Today's podcast is brought to you by First Merchant Bank, helping you prosper. Larry James has spent more than 4 decades impacting the legal, business, political, and philanthropy landscape of Columbus and beyond. Attorney James has advised local and national leaders, respected high-profile clients, and built a legacy of leadership, service, and advocacy. Beyond the courtroom, Attorney James is a passionate community leader and co-founder of the African American Leadership Academy, him and his wife. He has served numerous organizations across Central Ohio and has been recognized with countless honors for his leadership, professionalism, and commitment to improving the lives of others. Most importantly, Larry is a husband, father, grandfather, mentor, and man of purpose. Today, we'll discuss leadership, legacy, faith, fatherhood, community impact, and lessons learned through his incredible journey. Please welcome Attorney Larry James to Be a Baller podcast.
Good afternoon.
You had to get all that in. You know, there's a lot on there. I had to get all that in. I want to make sure that people know. And then we had our little Cleveland sidebars. You know,
Yes,
anytime
sir.
you meet somebody from what they call the land, I don't know where that came from. You know, we still Cleveland, you know. But let's go back in time a little bit. I understand that you grew up in a small town in Alabama. Can you talk about growing up there and your family and life lessons you learned down south?
Well, I was born in Elyria, Ohio in 1950, and I was, like many of the migration families, I was sent back and raised by my grandparents in Demopolis, Alabama, and Webb's Bend. They were sharecroppers. We had a well that we had to haul water from. We had an outhouse. And I always, joke and say that Sears and Roebuck catalog was not to shop for. So, my grandmother, who had such a strong impression on me, she'd get up at 4:30 in the morning. She'd cook breakfast for everyone, one of those healthy breakfasts. Then she'd go and work in the fields all day, and then she'd come back home and she'd do the dinner. And I don't know what attracted to me, just watching how hard she worked and how she cared for the family and how she did it with such dignity and grace. It was the old Jim Crow South in the 50s as we grew up. Everybody knew their place. Our Uncle Betty Ed took care of the colored movie house because we went upstairs and white folks went downstairs. But it was an experience that, if you didn't catch it, grow it, clean it, cook it, you didn't eat. We had no hospitals, we had no doctors, and for black folks, we said colored folks back then, you were a teacher or a preacher or you worked the fields.
Wow. As you think about your beginning, what inspired you to pursue a career in law and leadership?
It was a total accident. I graduated from Wittenberg University in 1974. And not really having any role models, I wanted to go into the work in law enforcement. And it was a job in outside of Dayton, Ohio, that there were 100 applicants for Huber Heights. And the job went to another person, and I went to law school.
Wow.
Just happenstance.
Wow, that's usually how God works. It's always his plan. It's always his plan. So talk about that law school experience,
It's funny.
Some of your mentors.
Yeah, I think the funny thing about law school and life and experience is I graduated on a Sunday and I had secured an apartment on the west side of Cleveland, had sent up the deposit, and I got there. An individual looked at me, and he wouldn't rent to me because I was black.
Wow.
So I went down in the Holiday Inn at 22nd and Euclid.
Still there.
I checked in there the night, and then the next day I went over to the student services, and there was a resident assistant job open. So I applied for it and got it. So I had free room for the summer because that guy had discriminated against me, and I came that way. And before the summer was out, the dorm director got fired, and I ended up being the dorm director through law school. So I had room and board and 12 hours of compensation for my 3 years of law school. So, that was the luck of the draw. And in my first year of law school, there was a good friend of mine who did something really stupid. I testified for him. His aunt was the assistant to the law director in Cleveland, and I testified. She was there, and she was so impressed, she said, "You need to come down to City Hall and apply for a job." So I got the job at City Hall as an intern, and I got to learn and grow and watch George Forbes operate. Then Mike White came in. I ended up going into the Kucinich administration. So through law school, my second and third year working at the law department down there, and it was the cutting edge because the 1981-83, the civil rights laws and things of that sort were just opening up. So I got to be on the cutting edge. And by happenstance, my roommate from college, his father was at the law firm of Crabb, Brown, Jones, Potts, and Schmidt, became the lead counsel on the Kent State trials. That trial was tried in downtown Cleveland while I was in law school, and the father of my roommate from college, so I got to see that up close.
As you were sharing that, you really took me back, really took me back. Over 4 decades, you become one of the most respected leaders in Columbus. What principles have guided your leadership journey?
I think of a couple of things, and working with and watching a George Forbes or a Jerry Hammond or a Charlie Brown, that lead counsel in the Kent State trials, you learn a couple of things, and that is you have to show up early, be there late, have your integrity, work hard, and try to use sound judgment. And the one thing we always laughed about, never forget, unless you own the company, you're the help.
That's a good word. You're just the help.
You're just the help. Wow. Don't get it twisted.
Wow. You represented major clients and national figures. How do you handle pressure while maintaining that integrity and balance?
I think, when you grow up black and poor, particularly in the old Jim Crow South, I always say there's not much anyone can throw at you that you have not seen. The thing that most people get an eyebrow raised over is, I've been general counsel to the National Fraternal Order of Police since 2001. And the way that job came about is unusual circumstances. From 83 to 86, I was almost trying a lawsuit in state or federal court to a jury. And I got pretty good at it. Towards the end, I think it was around 87, I was trying a case in Cincinnati for a company. I blackboarded a number to the penny, and that's what the jury came back with. 2 weeks later, I got fired. So I realized I was only a legend in my own mind. And I had been an advisor to Buck Reinhardt at that time. And Buck came to me and he said, I want to appoint my own police chief. And he said, would you help me? Dwight Joseph was his chief at that time. And I said, well, what do you want me to do? He says, I'd like you to get him to resign. So my job was to meet with the chief, and Dwight's father had also been chief of police. And I had worked in the city attorney's office with the safety forces. So I knew it very well, and I knew him very well. And so we had dinner, and he said, you want my resignation? And I said, that's the idea. And he says, okay. what's the time frame? I said 6 months, and he tendered his resignation. When we went through that process, I told Buck at that time that if you go through this process, Jim Jackson's going to be your chief of police, and it's going to be hell to pay because, I mean, that's revolutionary. Yeah. And I remember the night before, the mayor called me and said, I'm going to appoint Jim Jackson. And I said, good luck, because I knew the union was going to respond in such a way. And so this was happening at the same time. My legend in my own mind was dissipating. After Jim Jackson was appointed chief, it was a few months. The mayor was in my office. He said, I need you to come over to be safety director over the safety forces. And I was thinking, how do you distinguish yourself in a sea of competent lawyers? Columbus is saturated with lawyers that can do most things without blinking an eye, but how do you find yourself and distinguish yourself? And I thought, if I take the safety director's job, I will just be able to distinguish myself because you'd be the lead in either the 6 or 11 o'clock, 2 or 3 times a week, and a lead in above the fold and metro section or front page just because of the issues. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. And I made that decision for that purpose. In so doing, I had a philosophy: if you're going to get a bad cop, get him or her the right way. And so you fast forward, Andy Douglas, who was a Supreme Court justice, came to me and said, there's a friend of his running for president of the FOP. Will I support him? Well, I've got a Supreme Court justice asking me to write a check, so I did. And next thing I know, the gentleman, Steve Young from Marysville, was in my office saying, thank you for that contribution. And, I said, that's great. We had this 5-minute conversation turned into a 2-hour debate about black folks and cops. And he says, thank you. And he leaves, comes back 2 weeks later, and he says, I'm going out. I'm unimposed for president of the National FOP. I want you to be my general counsel. And I said, well, what does that take? He said, you're a smart guy. You'll figure it out. So you pay it forward. You do good things in the right way, and good things come to you. Sometimes it doesn't always work out that way, or you don't see it immediately, but that's exactly what happened. The other thing, when I was during that time period in 89, I was up for a federal judgeship. And I was one of the finalists. And when I went into the Department of Justice, the individual told me, he said, I'm going to tell you 3 things. Number 1, you're the most qualified. Number 2, you're not going to get it. And number 3, 3 to 5 years from now, you'll be happy you didn't get it. And I said, well, I'm angry. I'm going, I've deserved this. This is the dream of every trial lawyer, to be a federal judge. And he said, because every time we've appointed someone like you, you've got bored and you missed the action and you missed the money.
Well, I tell you, God has a way of working things out for the good, for the good.
And I am so happy I didn't get that federal judgeship.
Right. As we continue on, thinking about today's times, the times we're living in today, what advice would you give young professionals pursuing leadership roles today?
I think you have to show up. You have to raise your hands. When we created the African American Leadership Academy, we did it for a couple reasons. I always say success and age isolate you and segregate you. And if you had put a gun to my head back then when we started the African American Leadership over 20 years ago, I couldn't have named 10 black lawyers under the age of 35. And so I thought it was important that we have sustained intervention of leadership. And the things I tell them is, you've got to be present. You've got to raise your hand. You've got to have the discipline and patience. It doesn't happen overnight. And you've got to develop a tough skin. You've got to develop, how you're going to deal with failure, how you're going to deal with insults. And if you have aspirations, we were talking beforehand, and I said, the worst place you want to be is when you love someone, you admire them, you respect them, and they're deserving, and they're in need, and you're incapable of providing the help that they need. So you have to ask yourself, what position do you have to be in to address those needs. It's almost like being a branch on a tree. You can't take on more weight than you can sustain, or you will break. Folks are young, they're ambitious, they're romantic, they are ideal. That can get you killed.
Speaking of that, how has faith played a role in your personal growth and professional journey?
That's a delicate and difficult thing. I say I have doubts about my doubts. I've always been very close to the Black clergy, and I was spirituality has always been close to me. My family is very spiritual. My wife is very spiritual. They have our moments that we pray together. And I took 5 religion courses in college, and you try to find that place that sets well with you. And that's a continuous journey for me.
And it is for most people, really. It really is for most people. As we look at your record of community service and investing in others, why has that been so important to you and your wife, Donna?
Well, I'm the oldest of 7 kids. There are 5 fathers for 7 kids. We're raised in part in the old Jim Crow South on welfare. And, with 5 fathers, we had a motto almost like the Marines: you leave no one behind. And I think, Donna was a teen mom, and what she has done with the Center for Healthy Families and what we have collectively done in supporting various community initiatives, especially as they speak to Black folks. You understand, you live in that place of vouchers and things of that sort, and you struggle to break the cycle that welfare and all the other teen parenting, all those things. And so I couldn't escape it. I mean, I couldn't turn my back on my family nor my community. And you've got to understand that journey is going to take you many painful steps along the way as you try to get things right. But I think that it's too close to home not to care, not to give, and not to understand what that all means.
One of your big projects, you and your wife, was reopening the Lincoln Theater. Why was that so important to you?
Well, you go back to 1987, and Jerry Hammond and Buck Reinhardt, who was mayor, and Jerry was president of city council, they came to me and said, we want you to be president of the King Arts Complex. And I think you've lost your mind. I'm a young lawyer, and that was just not on my radar at the time, and it was messy, and I knew it was going to be a lot of work. And they told me that in no uncertain terms, you will do this or you will pay a price. So in 1987, I go over to be president of the King Arts Complex. I did that for 16 years, 2 different intervals. And what the arts community said to me about at that time is, what this guy knows about art, you can put in a teaspoon. Truer words were never spoken. But they did say he's trainable. And so I got my baptism. I learned about the arts. I learned about fundraising. I learned about board structure and all those things. So you fast forward from 1987 to 2010 when we reopened the Lincoln, and that time in between, I could do that in my sleep. I understood the politics. I understood the arts. I understand the role race played. I understood Columbus, Ohio, and how it worked. And one of the things was that happened along the way with the King Arts Complex to the Lincoln, Frank Vopes, who was president of the Huntington Bank at that time, I had gone to for the King Arts Complex to raise money for the King. And he ended up doing it, and he got the other banks to participate. I think he raised us like $150,000. And he says, if you do things right, I may have ask of you. So sure enough, 3 years pass, we get the complex correct, and I get summoned to his office. And he says, I want to just applaud you for the job you've done at the King. I'd like you to go over on the museum board, the Columbus Museum of Art. Well, I'm thinking, that's a $5,000 ask. Well, if I did that, I wouldn't have the money to spread back into my community at that thing, because I was a young lawyer. I didn't have a lot of money, but I had some. And I'm thinking, this is bad idea, bad timing. And I remember going back, I said, Mr. Vopes, can I get back to you? So I went back, wrote him a very nice letter explaining why the timing was wrong. He said, here's the deal. I was doing their litigation through Nationwide Insurance. He says, either you're going to do this or you're not going to be doing our work. I want you to put a pin in that, and I'm going to tell you why. It would be good for you to do this for the museum. It would be good for your own personal growth, and it's the right thing to do. You're going to stretch yourself, and you're going to write the check. So I kept the business. I went on the museum board. So those sort of things really helped me. And obviously with the Lincoln, you form the relationships. And it's almost like the Pac-Man where, if you ask somebody for money, they're going to ask you for something, or they're going to ask you for money. And you've got to be willing to do that exchange. There's a price you pay for success.
Speaking of the African American Leadership Academy, give me some of those stories. I know you got some stories from some person over those 20 years, some people who have gone through the academy and some of the great things you see them doing.
I think, when I sit in those rooms, it's probably the most humbling experience we have as a family, because you see those graduates, those fellows throughout Columbus in so many different roles. And when they come back and tell you that they were able to make critical decisions because of what they learned in their process through the academy. Luke Fedlam is one of my partners now who works with me in the firm, who came through the academy. And having him, when he came to our firm a year or so ago, and his office was on the other side of the building, and he says, nope, I want to move. I want to be right next to you. I want to learn. And the idea that I think the thirst that those fellows have, the ones that get it, not everyone gets it, and not at that level that you get it, but those that do, it's like a blossoming of a flower. And you've done the right thing.
That's good. This episode will air around Father's Day. This Fatherhood Month specials. You've accomplished so much professionally, but you're also a husband, father, and grandfather. What does fatherhood mean to you?
Well, I think it's a communal type thing. So, like I said, I'm the oldest of 7 kids, and I've been that father figure for the family, and obviously having 2 sons and having grandchildren. And you try to instill in them, that wisdom, and you want them to try to get it right. You want them to be wholesome. You want them to grow to be independent. You want them to be caring, and you try to, do that example. And both Donna and I try to set that example. And I think we try to create some type of stability and legacy and the connectivity with the family among the cousins. So we did a family reunion in Gatlinburg here a year ago. We had one house had 45 in it, another house had 60 in it. Wow. And the idea of watching the generations connect and the generations care for each other, the generations support each other, it is that safety net. You can't save everyone like that tree limb, but you try. And I would say we're clicking at a better than 90% rate of making a difference and having those individuals become adults that we're proud of.
I understand you have one of your grandchildren be a freshman in college. Do a little more research on you. How does that feel?
Well, no, I think it's good. So I think when you deal with that next generation, and you're never sure what they can relate to. I mean, this generation, we took our granddaughter. She graduated from North Carolina A&T, where Donna graduated from. So she wanted to make that difference, and now she's in law school. But You're not sure what they're picking up and what they're taking away. You don't know that till years later, until you have that conversation where they remind you of these things. And this is what the folks in the academy do, the same thing. So, when they say, I heard you,
Yes.
Not only did I hear you, I put it in practice.
Yeah, the saying that I say a lot is a lot of things, particularly working with young boys, a lot of things aren't necessarily taught, they're caught. And that's why I tell men that someone's always watching you. They're watching you. I know when I go in those schools, some guys kind of watching how I move, what I say. And I may not sit down and teach them something. They may not listen to all that, but they are watching. And it's a blessing when they caught it,
And, I think you struggle with that because as they grow to be young adults and you watch them make the mistakes they do, and they're going to make those mistakes. And I always say, have they gotten to the place of likability? You always love them, but you don't always like them.
That's good. That's good. Love them, but you might not always like them. And I'm sure you had that experience. I've raised two boys.
Yes.
And when they were teenagers, oh no, we wasn't buddies. Now my oldest son, TJ, when he calls now, he's I think he's 30, late 30s. When he calls now, I got to get ready for an hour conversation. Because I know all of a sudden Dad becomes an expert now, But growing, we didn't know nothing. We old school, but it's a blessing watching that evolution.
And I think you have to get over yourself because there's so many things that they take you through that it's just hard to forget. You're still mad at them, going, "What were you thinking, you idiot?" And now, and Donna got over, you can't keep telling that story. Well, I want to pay back.
Right. No, it's going to come back on their children when they have children.
That is exactly
That's when it's going to come back.
It does, and you
watch it.
And you've got to have the wherewithal to just zip it up and not remind them.
What you want to say,
yes.
Right. Just like you, but you don't want to say that, Speaking of being a grandfather, what lessons has being a grandfather taught you about life and legacy now?
That's very different because my wife is a doting grandparent. I'm the check writing grandparent.
Okay.
It's a different generation, and it requires a different approach than when we went through and we were raising our children, nieces and nephews to this next generation. They're privileged.
Yeah. Yes.
They are privileged. Yes. And I'm I have to be careful when I say, if we were growing up together, I would not have liked you, because you don't know how that's going to twist and turn. We have given them all the blessings that we didn't have.
Yes. And
how equipped are they to deal with the struggles, particularly like we're going on today? One of the things we had happen in the academy, people were saying, I'm tired of the black tax. I don't want to work twice as hard to be half as good, and yada, yada, yada. And I said, well, listen, if you want to be ordinary and mediocre,
right.
You go right ahead and do that.
What you doing?
And so I'm very careful with the grandchildren because they may see the world very different. They may excel very different. We can't impose our experience and the lessons that we had on them because they're just different people, different times with different, we've sent them to private school. They graduate with no debt. They get to keep their home in the summertime. And sometimes I just get mad.
Oh yeah, I do too.
Why are we doing this?
Well, I got to pay the bill. All y'all working.
So, that's a work in progress.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, but, I look at my, grandkids, my nieces, they're beautiful. I say they've traveled to more countries than I traveled to states at their age. Are you kidding me?
That's right. Speaking of that, as we continue on this fatherhood piece, what encouragement would you give fathers who are trying to lead families well in today's world?
Well, you can't wake up and do it. It's a constant 24/7 job. And I think you reference it And more than the conversation, it's the examples you set, as a husband, and how you're going to conduct yourself, how you're going to treat people, that moral compass, whether it's faith-based or something else, you want to exude and exemplify that thing that you're most proud of, that you want them to emulate.
As you look back, you've done a lot of things, you and your wife, you personally have accomplished a lot of things. What continues to motivate and inspire you today? What keeps getting you up?
I think it's, so I joke with my wife these days. I said, I'm thinking about doing something I never could have imagined, that is go into therapy. And the reason for that, I'm supposed to be on this retirement track.
Right.
And I just can't figure it out. I can't get there. And I know I have this drive, I have this gear, and I can't slow it down. I can't stop climbing that mountain. I think I'm getting to the point to better appreciate some of those successes. And I think that started to happen maybe a year ago. But, when you go to retirement, you're on a budget. I'm not used to that.
No, that's right.
I'm sorry.
Get ready.
I'm just, and I'm scared. I'm scared. Hell,
Can't just pick up and go.
Yeah, and you don't know, because your health and I can say this, that the family is stabilized. The grandkids, the nieces and nephews, the sons, they're at a great place. We position them well. So there shouldn't be another mountain to climb. But I'm trying to figure that out.
Yeah, and it is. I think all of us, we get to that, trying to figure what next, always looking for the next. Well, what else can I do? What more can I do? But what I found in this, I'm living by this at this stage, is there's no success without a successor. Yeah. And I think you mentioned Luke when you talked about Luke.
Yes.
That's a successor. That's somebody you can pour into, and they really wants it. That's the thing. You got to find somebody that wants this. Because I'm talking to these guys. I'm telling them, I'm trying to give you all this wisdom for free. I ain't even charging you for all this. You better sit yourself down and get this.
He is the first. That is that sponge, and I told him, I said, I'm tired. Don't make me get young again.
Right.
But he really takes advantage of and soaks up as much as he can. He takes advice. He takes criticism. He embraces it. The ego doesn't get in the way. And, he's a great husband. He's a great family person. Just a beautiful father.
Yeah.
I marvel at that. And he's a joyous person.
Yes.
So, that excites me. And maybe that's what keeps me going, because I've finally found that person that is there on all fours.
Right. As you come around the corner, this is a legacy podcast, and you are truly a baller. And a baller is for building a lifelong legacy. So you think about that word legacy, what does that mean to you personally?
I think that you've touched people in a way that it's helped them get to their next, that stabilizes them. Obviously, from a family standpoint, my sisters and brothers and where we came from and where they are today, none of them went to college. I would say if you were to sit down and talk to either one of them, you think they had postgraduate degrees. And so you've given those experiences, and, that next generation, even that generation that missed college, and their kids are now going to college. When people ask, me about our grandkids and our nieces and nephews, I said, how are we defining them? Because there's that extended family. And you try to make a difference in as many people's lives as you can.
And you and your wife have truly done that. You recently received the Harrison M. Sawyer Award from the Columbus Foundation. Can you talk about that experience and what that meant to you and your wife?
I think awards are a tricky thing.
Mm-hmm.
They really are. And I remember in 2018, I think every major award probably that was in the city we received. Success also generates envy and criticism.
Mm-hmm.
And, they go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of people that know of you that don't know you, that have an opinion about
Mm-hmm.
you. So those accolades are very private.
Mm-hmm.
Because they can, they don't really tell the story. The Luke Fedlams, those relationships, and others that you have and acquire, to Shia Safford at the Center for Healthy Families, because they know what it took to get those awards.
Yes.
So you gravitate to those type of people that have been a part of your journey, and you can have the private celebration. They're nice, but after a while, there's no place to put them. And I think the other thing you have to remember, there's a generation coming behind you that are clueless about who you are or what you're doing. So your name's on that bill. Nobody pays attention to that stuff after a while. It's only in your head and maybe your family head and your few friends that say, that's great. Otherwise, it's fleeing.
Yeah.
But I'd rather have it than not. Let's just say that.
Oh, no. It's just a kind of a God wink just to remind you that you've done well, So I want to thank you for being on the show. And I want to thank you for doing well. When you talked about that Leadership Academy, about us now, this thing, you can't be what you can't see, and people have to see us, they have to see success. And that's why I do this show, because I want people to know that there are persons out there that are successful, but the story behind it. You with the grandmother's story down in Alabama, the Jim Crow laws and all that. Person look at you now, they would never think that no, he ain't from that. Come on.
No, he was born with a platinum spoon in his mouth. And you get that, and you have to grow comfortable with it. Yes. I think, half of the times you're too black, the other times you're too Uncle Tomish. And, everybody has a different opinion about you, and you say, embrace it.
Amen.
Embrace it.
Amen.
Because if you know who you are and you're comfortable, you don't have to retaliate. You don't have to respond. It's like that movie said, I got mine and I'm okay with it.
Mm-hmm. I'm okay. So, Larry, thank you so much for joining us today on Be a Baller podcast. Your wisdom, leadership, and commitment to faith, family, and community are truly inspiring. Your story reminds us that success is not just about accomplishments, titles, or awards. It's about impact, service, integrity, and the legacy we leave behind for the next generation. Thank you for sharing your journey, your heart for leadership, and your perspective on fatherhood and community. To everyone listening, thank you for tuning in to Be a Baller podcast. Be sure to subscribe, share this episode, and continue following conversations that inspire growth, leadership, and purpose. Until next time, continue building your legacy one moment at a time. Thanks, Attorney James. Appreciate you being on the show. Yeah, this was good.
Thank you very much.
If you're looking for a safe place to grow your savings while still keeping your money accessible, consider a money market account. You can earn a competitive rate, enjoy check writing access, and keep your funds liquid for life's unexpected moments. It's a simple way to build savings without locking your money away. This Helping You Prosper tip is brought to you by First Merchants Bank, member FDIC.
Thank you for spending time with us here on Be a Baller podcast. Remember, legacy isn't built by accident. It's built through daily choices, faithful obedience, and intentional impact. If today's conversation encouraged you, challenged you, or spoke to your heart, share this episode with a friend, a teammate, a leader, or someone who's ready to live with purpose. That simple act of sharing helps us grow the movement and spread legacy-minded living. We want to invite you to join the legacy movement. This is more than a podcast. It's a call to action. And one of the best ways to go deeper is by grabbing your copy of the book, Living a Legacy. It's a powerful resource designed designed to help you apply what you're hearing and start building something that truly lasts. Until next time, keep showing up, keep pouring into others, and keep building a legacy worth following. Thanks for listening, and remember, be a baller, live on purpose, leave a legacy.